very important subject for today, especially last few years. Things have changed, things have evolved, and we are looking forward that how PSUs are basically starting a nation building activity. They're doing since independence, but I think going forward we are looking for more. Let's see. I have some of the fact, and that possibly give you some flavor of the day and try to capture what we are doing as a PSU, what we are intended to do, and at least what we should be doing to ensure that things looking positive. Now, I'm not talking about technology. I think much spoken, and I'm sure we have a session about technology, lots of things, AI and all that. PSU is leading the pack. I know Government of India is committed to that, and they are doing this piece through their own department and PSUs. But I'm basically going to talk about two aspects. One, from a monetary perspective, from an economic value addition perspective, what they do, and the second, how PSU can lead to the green transition, the sustainability, ESG and all that, social inclusiveness. I think we are doing, but let's see, more can be done to lead those stories. Now moving on, this slide, I don't know whether you have seen, but some of the data I'm sure that you are aware of. PSU today, when we talk about the public sector as a whole, they contribute 1/5 to the GVA, the gross value add. That's the GDP. That's basically, to be very honest, put it differently, GDP. 1/5 to that, but 1/4 to the gross capital formation. That's the investment. To the output, you guys contribute something around 1/5, but to the investment is around 1/4. Investment, I understand. I think everyone aware of, because PSUs normally lead the investment story. Government lead the investment story through the infrastructure, through other things. But that's how it's 1/4. And if I have to put it in two different things, so public sector is around 1/5, but out of that, 48% of the investment and then output actually comes from the PSU segment. And rest of the 52 or 50%, you can say, the coming from the segment, what we call the duties of the sovereign. Duties of the sovereign is basically defense, administration and things like that. That we need, that's a sovereign duty. The 50% of that coming from that. So all put together, the sovereign as well as PSUs, 1/5 contribution coming from the public sector. Rest, of course, private sector and households leading the pack, but that segment coming small portion of the companies is quite significant. Now, if you zoom in and find out that the growth at which the PSU contributing to GVA slightly coming down, but the growth at which the government is basically contributing going up. But to be very honest, let me put it differently. Some of us might misunderstand and might misinterpret this one. The PSU contribution coming down, that doesn't mean that's a negative terms. Actually, look at the government contribution going up, because we need the sovereign, we need the duties of the sovereign, what we call, to build the nation. If they are building the nation, then of course we can talk about inclusive growth, we can talk about equity, we can talk about the monetary value addition. That's how basically Government of India doing for last 10 years. They're building the government, they're building the sovereign more than what basically we call a company. So they're building the nation. And therein, not just the PSUs, in fact the private corporation and then household will also get the benefit. So that's what you can see, the green piece going up. Now it's stabilizing to little bit, but that's still higher number. Now, if you have to look at PSU, look at from the, what you call, it's a spread, and it's not just a footprint, also from its impact it creating. So I've looked at some of the data coming from the World Bank. What basically they said that any enterprises where the state government or the central government have at least 10% government stake, taken that number, and what is the ratio look like, which means that talks about the intensity of the penetration of the public companies within the country as against all the company in the country. We are somewhere in the middle. That ratio is coming 0.28%. China is heavily dependent, heavily driven by public sector companies, state-owned companies, 1.13%, whereas Germany is almost negligible, that's 0.01%. We are neither close to China, we are neither close to China nor close to Germany. We are somewhere in the middle, rightly placed. We need a good balance of a public sector company vis-a-vis the private sector company. That's a balance basically will ensure that we are moving in the right direction. Now with that, what will normal things comes out, that since the intensity of public sector company is higher than the sum of the developed market, they should be also contributing great, but actually that's not. If you look at the representation of PSUs, representation of public sector company in the top 500 company. The top 500 company actually we do every year, top DNB top 500 award. We did in the May, we do every year, we picked up that number. And if you see the representation of the PSUs in the top 500 companies globally, we have taken the Fortune Global 500, and India we have taken a top 500 company coming from the India. Globally, that number is at 25%. Out of 500 company globally, top 25% comes from the PSU segment. Unfortunately, that data is around 12%, less than half in India. So just 12% of that top 500 companies PSUs, the rest is our private and other things. But if you look at other side of the chart, go to the right hand side chart, their contribution is disproportionately different. It's very high. When you look at asset, they are contributing 54% of the total asset being created by the top 500 company in the country, whereas they are just 12%. Those 12% contribute 54% of the total asset. Those 12% contribute 42% of the revenue, and those 12% contribute 36% of the profit. Look at the 12% because they are operating really in a strategic sector, important sector, and they are basically the growth engine for us. That's the basically things we are looking from the PSU. They are doing good job. 54% of the asset. That's a great number. Now, when you move to slightly different metrics, two what you call objective we talk about coming from the PSUs is one, creating social value for the nation, and the second, creating a monetary value. If you look at the horizontal axis is the monetary value creation, and the vertical axis is the social value creation. Unfortunately, putting all the PSUs in one bucket, in fact the green is a strategically important CPSEs, and then pink is a non-strategic CPSEs. If I put all the companies on this chart, 17% of those companies, either strategically important and non-strategically important, they are contributing great on both front, social value creation as well as the monetary value creation. But unfortunately, the number looks weird when we look at the bottom down metrics. 44% of the company, they are neither contributing monetary wise nor contributing to social value creation. And the remaining you can see they are either better on the social value creation, 35%, or they are better on the monetary value creation, that 5%. Now, if you look at those 44% countries, 44% of those companies, especially the non-strategic CPSEs, we understand strategic CPSEs because you need to be operating in those space because those are very important from a sustainability perspective for the country. But look at the non-strategic company. They are neither contributing monetary wise nor contributing social wise. What we can do? How we can bring them into the other three box where they are at least contributing monetary or social value creation or both. There is a need for all of us collectively in this room and outside the room basically work forward to ensure that those set of companies are really trending in other direction or in the three block to ensure that we all are growing together. That's what basically need of the hour. Now, till now, I am talking about the economic value creation or monetary value creation. Let's shift the gear and talk about social value. Basically, your green energy talks about environmental, ESG, what is the basically nowadays everyone talking about, and that's things I think we can talk about today, how PSU can lead the story. Today, if you talk about PSU, they are central to the net zero ambition target what we have till 2070. PSUs are central because they are operating from a very highest emitting sectors. They are operating in a very sector who are emitting very high carbon dioxide, things like that. They are in fact they are strategically important, but they are the emission sector. And in fact, the capacity of PSUs to drive those transition. That's why the PSU is very center. And we talk about number of PSUs within the top 500 company who are operating from a green gas intensity sector. 48% of those companies are operating from that segment. That number for the global is not different. The same thing, which means all the country are trending in the same direction, which means the CPSCs or PSUs talking about, they are operating from the green gas intensity sector, at least majority of that. That's coming from the PSU because that's strategically important. While there are ESG implications, but they are strategically important countries. What we need to do now? Now, I think as a PSU, we have traveled the journey. We are doing good job. If I have to talk about NDC target, a nationally determined contribution as per the Paris Agreement, the capacity of having a clean energy target, in fact, the clean energy target capacity was set up for 2030, but good news is that the PSU were achieved by now, this year, 2025. So, 5 years in advance, we have achieved the target for the what we call clean energy capacity target. That's a good stuff. But if you have to look at the right hand side, in spite of reaching those target, comfortably, our energy requirement, electricity capacity and generation, if I have to compare, 50% coal capacity and 50% renewable energy. 75% of our energy requirement comes from the coal, whereas just 25% come from the renewable sectors, which means there is a need for PSUs to think about decarbonization era, or else we have a problem. Now that story can be only led by the PSUs. Look at the left hand side, that's the story we led, which is great. Now other side, right hand side, I think that's not a big task, but we need to read the stories. Now moving on, why I'm saying, while the government of India have committed to or maybe pledged net zero target by 2070, but most of the companies, most of the PSUs have basically fast forward. In fact, they've made it early. Transportation, if I have to say, the Indian Railway made that they are going to achieve the net zero target by 2030. Oil and gas sector 2038 by 2046. I think ONGC is targeting somewhere by 2038. Whereas most of the company have not joined, they are just placing themselves on the par with Indian government. What we need here, I think, in emission target when we talk about, there is a need to include scope 3 in the target assessment, because that have a more emission capacity rather than what we do today. And the second thing is that more and more companies are expected to join the leg of targeting by, let's say, 2030, 2024 or 2025 or 2035, not 2070, because 2070 there's a country, that's a country target. I think PSU we need slightly earlier. That's what's the expectation coming from all of us and all of you. Now moving on. Now as I said, I think from what we call NDC target, if you talk about, the annual emission is close to 4.4 gigabyte, what we call carbon dioxide equivalent by 2030. That's a target we are looking at so far, which is great number. I think that we certainly be going to achieve. But if you look at the target set up in the what you call global warming and the environment and climate change, that's 1.5 degrees Celsius target as per the Paris Agreement. 1.5 degrees Celsius target means the GTCO2e has to be close to 1.65, not 4.4. So if you're targeting by 2030 4.4, The target ideally has to be 1.65. And what is 1.5 degrees Celsius pathway? Because as per the Paris Agreement, world targeted that the average temperature on the planet should be just higher by 1.5 degrees Celsius as compared to pre-industrialization era. We all know what's happening in global warming. We have seen the global extreme weather, we have seen the impact on the biodiversity, we have seen the extreme heat, cold in most of the area, we have seen things are changing. In order to protect that, we need to follow the 1.5 degree Celsius pathway as per the Paris, which means there's a gap of 2.75 GTCO2e. That need to be captured, and that things has to be led by all of us, and that story is actually coming from all of you, that how we fill those gaps. Otherwise, no matter how much we achieve 4.5 or 3.4, you're not going to meet 1.5 degrees Celsius pathway. And then we all know what's happening on the global warming today. So that's what basically we are looking at from all of the PSUs to lead those stories. Either from economically, we are leading those stories, but from the green energy perspective, we want those stories to come out. Now, in order to summarize what look like, economically, we all have seen 1/5 contribution coming from that, investment looking great, and from a contribution perspective, within the top 500 company, 50% in the asset, roughly 42% from the revenue, 36% from profit, things looking great. Economically, things are looking very great from the PSU perspective. They are leading the story. What is expected on the green energy transition perspective, because the capacity to drive those transition, the change, huge within the PSU ecosystem, because rest of the economy will follow PSU story. Thank you for listening, and I am looking forward for your continued discussion and continued thought-provoking questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Singh, for that insightful session. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if there's one phrase that defines India's growth story today, it is this: digital governance. Over the past decade, we've seen how technology has not only streamlined public services, but also brought citizens and the government closer than ever before. Yet, as digital adoption accelerates and increases, so do the challenges. The need for agile frameworks, stronger cybersecurity, ethical use of AI, and seamless collaboration across departments. Our first panel of the day brings together distinguished leaders to discuss exactly this, navigating the evolving landscape of digital governance. From understanding the implications of the DPDP Act to building robust cybersecurity for critical infrastructure, to enabling data sharing across agencies and creating governance models that are adaptive and future-ready. There is a lot to uncover. Please join me in welcoming our panelists for the evening. Shri Alok Shankar Pandey, Group General Manager, IT and Chief Information Security Officer, Dedicated Freight Corridor Corporation of India. Sir, may I request you to kindly take a seat as per the names displayed on the screen. Shri Atul Kumar, Director, Global Trade, Cyber Diplomacy, Government Initiative, Data Security Council of India, DSCI. Mr. Pratim Datta, Director of Digital Iron Mountain, India. Now, moderating this session is Mr. Mukesh Kumar Jain, Senior Director Sales, Dun & Bradstreet, India. Over to you, sir.